want to get into the Vouchmeister segment? This is something I haven't followed, so you'll be breaking news to me. What's going on in the Vaush subreddit, Gavin?
Yeah, let's take a look over
Important
here.
news on BreadTube.
Yeah, so I noticed this. I keep tabs on most of the subreddits for most of the prominent lefty streamers, and I did notice this. To be honest, I agree with a lot of this, so I'm interested if you do too, Zach. And then I also have a comment that I wanted to play from the Amazing Atheist. He recently was discussing Vaush and the kind of BreadTube left at large, so I wanted to get your reaction to those comments, Zach. But yeah, let's take a look here. This person on Reddit says, why the fuck doesn't Vaush update his stream's title? In my opinion, Vaush's streams over the past months have been mind-numbingly boring, but that's besides the point. Nowadays, I only tune into his live streams for his major segments, but I swear to God, it feels like 70% of his stream is some random, irrelevant bullshit. And when he does talk about the segments that he puts in the title of his streams, he always begins with a sigh and says, like, okay, let's get this over with. It's very obvious he has no passion to talk about the things he puts in the title of his streams, and he just wants to get it over with and talk about some irrelevant shit that I can say with a great deal of confidence on behalf of a great portion of his live audience we simply do not care about. But why does he not at least change the titles of his streams? I remember last week I stayed tuned because he was supposed to do a Jubilee segment. It was the title of his stream, but he just ended the stream without doing the Jubilee segment. Sounds like us. I wasted like 40 minutes of my fucking life listening to the most god-awful takes about the most random BS while he keeps getting interrupted by his cats every now and then, which triggers the fuck out of me. And he doesn't even do the fucking segment that was in the title. Is he just clickbaiting off the segments? Really cheap and lazy move. So obviously a lot of this is kind of over the top. Like, I don't give a shit about Vaush getting distracted by his cats. Who cares? And obviously every streamer talks about a bunch of irrelevant shit during their live shows. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's kind of a given. If you tune into someone's live stream, it's not just going to be like the most to the point, substantive conversation. Yeah, a lot of it's going to be kind of meandering. That being said, I do share the feeling that Vaush's content has become lazier recently, that his heart is not as in it as it once was, that he's, less interested or enthusiastic about debating other big profile individuals, whether they're on the right or the left or anywhere in between. It just seems like some of that passion or fire that he once had has dissipated a little bit. I'm not sure why. It could very likely have to do with the fact that the left is not at its healthiest right now, as a movement, specifically online. There's not a lot of energy around the sort of leftist positions and discussions that we were having around the Bernie Sanders era. So I think there's a variety of factors. Also, there's just burnout, something that every streamer experiences at some point, and honestly, everyone in any job experiences. If you do something for long enough, you're eventually going to get kind of bored and have to learn how to make it interesting for yourself or make it continually exciting for yourself. This is something everyone experiences. But that being said, I just want to say I do kind of agree to some extent that the content has been a little bit lazier. LOL, the Biden advocacy is killing his soul. Yeah, I mean, I think that also might be part of it. He doubled down so much on Joe Biden, went so far in the I'm the number one Joe Biden bro ever direction. And then a month later, Joe Biden is committing a genocide, which Vaush acknowledges, by the way, to his credit. So, I mean, it must be hard to get enthusiastic about that. I think one last thing I was just going to say is I never hear Vaush talk about socialism anymore. Like, very, very rarely do I hear him talk about socialism. That used to be a big point of his show, and I very rarely hear him talk about it anymore. But what were you going to say, Zach?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that there's a lot to unpack here, and I think that obviously, like, this person has a very specific take that they're looking for Vaush, but Vaush is a live streamer, so like I could totally understand Vaush reading this and being like, "Kick rocks and watch a different fucking streamer." Like, fuck you. Like, I totally get that reaction to this. I think that that's how I would internalize this if somebody presented it to me. But that's because I only take feedback from people like Gavin when it comes to the show. Like, I'm like, oh, it better be somebody that has as much skin in the fucking game as me, bro. Who else did this for fucking 15 live viewers for months? No. because at some point he's like, he feels like he's climbed to the top of the mountain. He feels like, this is who the fuck I am. This is what I'm going to do. He doesn't probably need the cash anymore. He probably knows he has a batch of hardcores that are going to ride with him for the next 10, 15 years. He's already made a lot of money and he's just pursuing his interests, right? It's a horrible time for the left. So he's like, fuck it. Let me just entertain myself. Let me, get involved in these video games that I'm interested in. Let me start having a fashion hobby, like, whatever, good for him. And then if his numbers dwindle, if the fucking view count dips to a point where he's not comfortable with it anymore, he'll start fucking grinding again. I also think part of it is the expectation of Twitch streamers and people who come from that background. Obviously, Vaush streams to YouTube because he got banned on Twitch, but it's the similar kind of style of content creation. They have so much that they're supposed to cover such a large period of time that they don't prioritize like cutting to the chase and just getting out a good piece of content, right? Like it's all long and drawn out. So it kind of gets on my nerves too. And you guys know this. I actually have to work on it in the opposite direction because I get so paranoid about dead airtime that I'll just start fucking firing too fast and we'll get some blanks thrown out there. People will be like, that wasn't funny. Why did Zach say that? I'll be like, because I was fucking nervous that there was no audio coming out of either of our microphones. I'm like, I had to fill the airtime, right? So there's definitely a balance there. And when you get to the size of streaming where you're like at the upper echelon, like a Vaush, like a Destiny, like a Hassan, you don't really feel the urgency to be filling your airtime like that. You're just inviting people to hang out with you. You're inviting people to go about your routine, how you peruse the internet and how you respond to things like along the ride with you. It's a very different sales pitch than a tight cut, let's get after it kind of podcast. Gavin and I like to see ourselves in the middle of it. We'll hang out. We'll have a good time, but 3 hours is like the long end of what you're going to get from us. Most of the time, you're going to be getting 90 minutes to 2 hours because it's easier for us to fire really quickly. So I definitely think it's multi-pronged. It's like the left is dead. He fucked himself by getting behind Joe Biden. And to Vaush's credit, I think that analytically he does believe in lesser evilism. I think that's something he's committed to, and he's willing to see that to the most like dramatic extent possible, right? Even on the margins, if he calculates that Joe Biden will be 1% better than, he's 100% down. And I think he's even said the 99% Hitler argument, like he's going to pick the 99% Hitler against 100% Hitler. And he's like, that's basically math, right? So that's his analysis. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to the fact that that's just going to be constant paralysis, that's just getting on the hamster wheel, that's just everything that we've done forever. And it's becoming really, really unsatisfying to people to hear that, especially given the backdrop of what's being perpetrated in the Middle East right now, and ethnic cleansing, before our eyes in a way that people have never seen before because of TikTok, because of the media, because of all that. So I think that that's also playing a huge role in it. So the compounding of all of those things, I don't think it's anything personal about Vaush. I think that he definitely has the skill set. He has one of the best cadences. He's very good at debate. He'll be able to pick this back up if he wants to. But yeah, I also found myself probably not tuning into Vaush as much recently.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another theory that I've seen on his subreddit, again, going back to the lack of socialist discussion. Someone says, when is the last time Vaush talked about socialism? I think his new lifestyle is changing him. Someone else says he never talks about it now. All he says is these people want you dead over and over and never offers anything else, but that's kind of boring and repetitive. And yeah, I see that too, not just from Vaush, but his ilk on YouTube, the likes of Keffels and, the people that kind of come from his community. They've really like turned on the left, and like they're always, whenever socialist or communist comes up,
Keffels
it's like
made that video, the like bread tube is over or something.
Yeah, it's like this weird new grift where it's like, actually the far left is the problem that we need to spend all of our time, calling. And I get it. Like a lot of our content is also about other lefties. I'm not saying there's a problem with like discussing the ideas of other people on the left, but like, I don't know. It's just a change of tune for someone like Vaush, who again used to be a huge advocate of socialism. I still think if you asked him, he probably would call himself a socialist. But this is another criticism I've heard. And I have mixed feelings on it because obviously everyone's allowed to grow as a person and change as a person and all that stuff. But I have heard people in Vaush's community say that one of the things that they really liked about Vaush in the beginning of his career as a streamer was that he was a little bit more relatable. He kind of was known like as a neckbeard, like people would always roast him for that. It'd be like, he just looks like a normal guy, he'd wear t-shirts and his chair was all fucked up and he would just sit there and stare into the camera and debate people and stuff. And now it is true that he's leaned a lot more into like I'm a fashionista and I'm a flex a lot more and, brag about my wealth and stuff like that. I don't care about that shit. Like, you guys know I've always defended Hassan for having a big house and nice cars and stuff like that, but that's always kind of been his thing. He's always kind of been like an Instagram model leftist.
Vaush has been more H3 vibes.
Exactly, yeah. Vaush has always had a different vibe. Like that never was his vibe. And now it does seem like he's kind of trying to make it more of his personality, right? Like wearing really nice clothes, which I have no problem with at all. I also love fashion. But I don't know, potentially, according to some people in his audience, that might be influencing his perspective on things like socialism, which might lead to him talking about it less. I don't know if it's that or just because it's not as cool to talk about socialism anymore. You know, it's not exactly in vogue like it was when Bernie Sanders was running for president. And again, just for the record, I don't think that socialism means everyone's poor and no one has nice clothes. To me, it means no one's poor and everyone has nice clothes. You know what I'm saying? Like that is the point of socialism. We should all afford nice things. We should all be able to treat ourselves to the luxuries of life.
100%. Yeah, I think it's definitely got something to do with the fact that you can't grow and you can't get to the top right now focusing 100% on leftism. You can either do kind of the David Pakman approach where you dilute your message and you go for more of an MSNBC style delivery and you can continue to grow. But none of the shows that have leaned hardcore into leftism and being left as fuck without branching out into other things have failed, right? That's why you mentioned like people will say, well, Hassan is damn near tanky, right? Like he's left as fuck. And that's true, but that's not all that Hassan's selling. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's not even the majority of what Hassan is selling. Hassan is selling how cool he is. Hassan is selling his lifestyle. Hassan is basically Jake Paul with like socialist principles, right? So he's not like a huge asshole. Maybe he is. I don't fucking know, but he's like not reached the heights of the Paul brothers as far as like notoriety and infamy, right? And he is out here making lefty cases, but he is also doing what Vaush wants to do publicly, which is balling out, right? He bought that really fancy car. He bought that huge crib. And he said, guys, I'm still a leftist. Look at I gave up $2 million to charity this year. And it's true, right? Like he's succeeding under the barbarisms of capitalism with his soul. And a lot of people see that as a model because why? Because a lot of us feel in our heart like, oh yeah, America is totally wrong and broken. But also a lot of us feel in our heart, hey, I want to get rich. And we're like, I think I would just kind of be doing what Hassan was doing if I'm being honest with myself. Like I would be living a really nice life and I would be advocating for myself to be paying more taxes, for us to give as much money to charity as we can, but also to be like, guys, this is what we want to do and we're just succeeding and we're not hurting anybody. Okay, it doesn't hurt anybody for me to sit in my life or my living room and live stream or like have, people on and talk to them. That's not me profiting off of the backs of anybody else. I'm not exploiting like sweatshop labor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that Vaush wants to transition into that. And in a similar way, like Gavin and I, we want to grow our show. And we've talked about, like, obviously we're very committed to our formula here, but we're like, how do we incorporate more guests coming on? Like, how do we try and dabble into more media, talking about like film and music and cinema and that kind of shit, right? And also talking about sports when it's, relevant. And how do we thread those needles and how do we make it all part of the same thing? And how do we make it more balanced of an environment where it's actually still fun? It's actually still relaxing. It's actually still entertaining to get caught up on leftist news, which was something that we were all experiencing because we got this like proximity because of our beliefs on the internet, right? Like this parasocial community that we were able to foster because of the Bernie Sanders thing. And that now that that's imploded, people are looking for different lanes. And I think that's just what Vaush is caught up in right now. He's recalculating the, play video games and talk about socialism isn't, and argue with people who are white supremacists. Like that's not going to be his model moving forward. That's going to upset some people. Those people will potentially come back. They might not. But I don't think that Vaush is super concerned about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I get the same vibe. Hopefully he does kind of kick it back into high gear again, because I'm not going to lie, even regardless of his political takes, what I'm more upset about is like the lack of the intense debate bro kind of a vibe that Vaush used to just emanate. And I get that people chill out now that he's successful. He doesn't need a grind like that anymore. But there was a point in time where Vaush was just like trying to fight everyone. He was like, come get me, bro. I will debate anyone. I will fight anyone. And I'm sure to some extent that's still true. I imagine if like Charlie Kirk or whatever was like, hey, Vaush, let's debate, I'm sure he would still do it. But it just doesn't seem like
a while ago.
He was on Tim Pool. Yeah. But it just doesn't seem like he's out there like, trying to make it happen, like out there just provoking every single person and their freaking mother into a fight, which again might not be the most productive way to build a coalition, but it certainly was entertaining.
Let's get into the last thing by TJ Kirk, because I'm decided to hear him weigh in. I know obviously they had a spicy debate when Vaush went on the deep fat fried pod.
Yep. that did get pretty spicy. I really enjoyed that debate. But yeah, this is a video that TJ released that I was just randomly watching last night about Alex Jones' triumphant return to Twitter. And he got into a little bit the political culture right now and how he views it as somewhat similar to the way it was around 2016, of course, when Trump first got elected. But yeah, let's take a look here. He name drops Vaush, so I wanted to get your reaction to that, Zach.
So even platforms like YouTube that have, maintained that Alex Jones should be not on the platform have continued to just host a shit ton of super virulent right-wing content. And not only do they seem to host it, but it seems like they push it. It seems like even someone like me, who I'm far more likely to watch left-wing content than right-wing content, it still feeds me tons and tons and tons of right-wing content. And it never organically is just like, how about this left-wing thing, right? So that's really bizarre to me. It seems like the social climate is once again very similar to what it was in 2016. But if anything, it feels almost like it's more that this time around. It feels like there's even less sort of contention. And it really feels like the online right is extraordinarily powerful and influential right now. And you go and look at a lot of these like left-wing channels, these explicitly left-wing channels. It just seems like they're in total disarray. You just had Hassan and Ethan Klein part ways in this big drama fest. You just had, you Destiny's got all this divorce news going on. You go watch Vaush's channel. It's like Vaush has turned into a complete and fucking utter dumber who's just like, oh man, we're fucked. Oh God, no, we're fucked. So there's no like hopefulness or optimism left.
If that is what Vaush is doing, honestly, it's relatable because I've been doing a little bit of that myself recently. I've been like, guys, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not lying to you guys. It was so funny. I told my dad we were going to do potentially like a late night show on Christmas. And he was like, that's really jolly. Who the fuck are we castigating tonight? Who's on our shit list this Christmas? I was like, oh, that's funny. That's the Vanguard spirit at this point, right? He's like, I'm sure that'll be an uplifting message for the people. I was like, yeah, right. But I kind of agree and disagree, right? Like, I don't think it's the left's fault that this is happening. One, the left's firm opposition to corporations, I think, naturally puts us at a disadvantage when it comes to something like being on a platform like YouTube, which is a corporation, a mega corporation, one of the biggest on earth, owned by Alphabet, right? Google. So they're going to obviously promote content that's within their realm of respectability. And if it's not within the realm of respectability, let's make it right wing because, that generates a lot more traffic. And as long as it's not like explicitly white supremacist, then we'll still be able to put like a Coca-Cola or like a Glade press and seal ad in front of it and make money. And then we'll let these guys make money as they're, parodying this. And I just think that for the time period we're in right now, there are, as Gavin, you've said it all the time, there are more right wingers on YouTube. Like, I just think this has become a battleground of, mostly right wingers, mostly libertarians, and then a handful of the like remaining lefties of who still give a shit, who still want to consume content from the golden age of BreadTube, which feels like it's behind us.